The rising price of popular Saudi milk brand Al-Marai has led customers to organize a Gulf-wide boycott. The Riyadh-based dairy company, which turns out everything from yogurt and cheese to fruit juices, recently raised its price on fresh milk by about 14%. The company argues that the hike is needed to offset the increasing cost of production, including wages, feedstock, and packaging. But shoppers objected. If you take a look at my screen, you'll see one of a number of very strong statements that were made by Saudi consumers on social media platforms. And actually, if you take a look, there was a Facebook campaign that was begun. Now, we took this screenshot last Friday. You can see about 2,000 people were liking this particular page, which was calling for a boycott. However, just within the last few days since then, the number of people on that Facebook page have almost tripled. Now, the question is, did the boycott work? Well, it appears so. On Sunday, Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Commerce ordered prices to return to their July 1 levels, and on Monday, the company complied. What struck us about this campaign is how rapidly it gained ground in a country that is not known for public dissent. In June, we brought you a story about Saudi women campaigning for their right to drive. And this is actually not the only issue. These people were trying to bring attention to gender rights issues in the kingdom, but it's not the only protests that we've seen occurring recently. Last week, 20 people were arrested when a small group attempted to protest outside the Saudi Interior Ministry. These events are not the norm in Saudi Arabia and are even more significant because they took place after the Interior Ministry banned all protests in March. Now, we're going to have another guest joining us via Skype in just a minute, but I want to come back to you, Ahmed. You mentioned at the top of the show that change is coming too slowly for young people in Saudi Arabia. Can you speak to this particular issue?
Well, I think what you mentioned about how supposedly protests are banned, but there are people protesting, all these different things, showing you how there is change and the change is happening. It's just that it's happening on a small scale and on small steps, happening one at a time. But it is happening in one sense or another.
What are the risks that people are running when they stand up to protest when protest has been banned?
Well, I mean, as you say, the people who protested outside the Ministry of Interior last week, many of them have been arrested. The same thing with women who drove. Some of them were stopped by the police. One of them got a ticket. They had to sign pledges basically saying they're not going to drive again. So, you know, you are taking a risk when you protest in a place that is where protests are not allowed. But we're seeing that people are willing to actually take that risk, partly because they feel there is a need for change, and they're also inspired by all these revolutions happening around them in the region.
Well, I want to bring our Skype guest into this conversation. Joining us now via Skype is Essam Al-Zamil, a Saudi blogger who's living in Dammam. Essam, thank you. Welcome to the stream. Talk to us a little bit about this protest of Al-Marai. Why this company and why now?
Hi, and thank you for having me on your show. Basically, there is no reason why it started now. Basically, it started suddenly by the social users on Twitter and Facebook. The company announced that they will be increasing the prices 2 weeks ago, I think. And there was no reaction toward the hike until some people raised the issue on Twitter. They shared some articles regarding the hike in prices. Also, there are so many articles replying to the company saying there is no justification, because the justification for the company for raising the prices was that there is an increase in the costs of production. But seeing their financial statement, it shows that the expenses has not increased. Actually, in 2 years, the expenses have decreased. The ratio of expenses over the revenue has decreased 1%.
Well, I actually want to get Ahmed's thoughts on this point as well, because we understand that in March, the Saudi government announced subsidies for dairy farmers, and they were subsidizing the cost of water and various other products to support their business. So the actual profit margins grew for these businesses. How does that play into the response of the people to the subsequent price hikes?
That's one of the main reasons why people were very angry about this, and they reacted very strongly on social media. And this is one point that Essam actually pointed on and talked about in detail on his blog, about how the dairy companies are being helped by all these subsidies from the government for electricity and water, and because Saudi Arabia is a very hot country. It's very difficult to actually have a dairy farm there, where you have to air condition the cows and the farm.
Well, and actually, if you look at my screen, we've got a vision of what actually it takes to have a farm, a dairy farm in Saudi.
It's a very costly process to actually do that, and without all these subsidies, these companies will not be able to actually be profitable. And well, these companies are now making huge profits, but even with that, they're willing to hike the prices for consumers. No wonder consumers are angry.
We have a tweet coming in from Mosterlenk asking if there's an alternative education movement in Saudi Arabia, such as homeschooling or any of this. And the reason I bring this up is because just on a broader level, even we were joking that a lot of the reasons people are citing for why there are protests in Saudi Arabia is because people have nothing to do. Apparently, the age group of 15 to 24, there's a 40% unemployment rate. How does that play in? How important is it, the unemployment?
Let's actually get Essam, so your response to that.
What was the question?
Is the fact that so many people, 40% of people aged 15 to 24 are unemployed, playing into this spirit of protest that we're seeing? Or is it just the Arab revolutions in spring?
It could be a factor. Nobody can be sure about the factors, but I'm sure that the internet has the highest impact on giving people chance to have some advocacy for some movements. Spreading the news, sharing interests. Unemployment could be a factor. It's not a huge problem yet, but I'm not sure if it's the main factor or the only factor.
Yeah, this is important. This is something that I want to emphasize, is that, we have seen the dairy companies a few years ago hike their prices, and they did not face this kind of protest because social media was not as widely popular and available at the time. But now, whenever a company like that makes such a step, they should be ready to be faced with large protests online. And this protest online is making them now think again about taking such a step in the future.
Do you think that this could actually lead to broader protests on more kinds of issues? Is there a culture of protest developing?
I think the internet is helping people to first know their rights, that they have legal rights that they can demand and try to work for them. And at the same time, it's helping them organize and communicate when there is a shared cause to actually advance it and work on it together.
I just very quickly want to mention that we did reach out to the Al-Marai company on several occasions over the past couple of days, and we have heard no response via email and phone. So it's important that we give them the opportunity to...
Now, Essam, let's come back to you. I'm curious, as we're looking at what's happening with the Arab revolutions, what's happening with this particular social media revolution, what kind of change do you think is realistic in Saudi Arabia in the coming year or so?
That's a very hard question to ask. Nobody can be sure, but the most important thing is to raise awareness on common rights, basic rights, difference of basically understanding freedom in its right context. So mainly awareness could be the most important thing to raise among the youth. But what could happen or how it could happen, this is something nobody can know.
Ahmed,
you get the final word. What's your hope for the future?
I hope that change will come, that our country and our citizens will, at some, in the future, enjoy their rights of freedom and justice and democracy like the rest of the world.
Essam, thank you so much for joining us. Ahmed, that's a wonderful point to leave on. Ahmed, thank you as well. You can join the rest of this conversation at stream.aljazeera.com. We'll be talking about some other salient issues. Remember that you can also be a part of our pre-show every day at 1925 GMT. Join the conversation using the hashtag AJStream. We will see you online.